Pretty soon I'm going to have this lighting perfect. It's progress, then perfection. So, what is this spiritual principle that I'm going to bring up this week? That's the most powerful of all of them, or tied for first, because there's a couple of others. But this is probably the most challenging one. It's the one that has more disagreement in the world than any other spiritual principle. It's one that you may not agree with, and yet we're going to bat it around like a cat and um, a lizard that it's caught. We're just going to bat it around and see what we think about it. And we'll see if it is the most transformative of all spiritual principles. And what's interesting, and I like how Emmett Fox says this greatest of all spiritual principle, this metaphysical premise of life, can be compressed into three words. And a great spiritual master did that. It's as if you could take all the spiritual literature from around the world, which would be stacks of books that would go from here to the moon with trillions of words, and compress it down to three words, three irritating words. Resist not evil. Resist not evil. Well, Greg, you better do some unpacking, because what the hell does that mean? Because when I first heard about it and began to study it and listened to what a couple of great spiritual authors and teachers had to say about it, I was pretty much in the dark. But I was also in the dark in the form of I had been resisting evil my whole life and had paid the consequences. But a very quick analogy: if you're driving down the road in a beautiful environment, verdant hills, uh, beautiful animals, butterflies, that kind of a scene, and suddenly in the distance you see a big old gruesome roadkill. As you get closer and closer to it, should we pay more attention to it as it begins to come closer and begins to go by us? In other words, clouds, birds, happy kids, happy animals, most beautiful scene we've ever seen, maybe a rainbow, and here comes this big gruesome roadkill, and here we are, watching it go by in all of its smashed, gut-ridden glory. Do we do that, or do we keep our eyes up and on what's beautiful? Well, the reason I use that example is I think I can back up the truth of resist not evil with modern consciousness, neuroanatomy, and neuropsychology, which is, here's resist not evil said in modern language. Whatever you put your consciousness on increases. Whatever we look at is simply magnified in our own awareness. That's the way our brains work. That's the way our reticulating activating system at the base of our brain works. Whatever we're trained to look at will expand and increase in our experience. Do you realize the way that our brain works? That we can, only keep track of maybe 2,000 bits of information in any given moment out of trillions and trillions and trillions. In other words, our brains being filters of reality. If we try to take in too much, we would be overwhelmed and we would not be able to survive. This ability to focus on just a few things is a survival technique. Yet, inadvertently, or maybe vertently, which must be a word, many of us have learned to pay attention to what we don't like, and what we don't like begins to swell in our experience. What is it that we could pay attention to that we don't like that could swell in our experience? Depression, sadness, disease, injury, politics, trauma, PTSD. I could expand the list ad infinitum, definitely ad nauseum, just ad nauseum, right? So today's message is, if we're going to pay attention to something, it's going to increase in our experience. And hell is always available to look at in our reality. Hell is a strata of consciousness. Consciousness can rise above problems, but if we're going to throw weights onto our consciousness and pay endless attention to what or whom we do not like, well, then get ready to have that chained into our consciousness, and it will never be unloosed forever until we let it go. Now, of course, the cynical, pragmatic person would say, well, are you telling me not to pay attention to the evil and the injustice in the world? You're going to have to decide that for yourself. Is your effort to reduce the evil in the world working? Is humanity's effort to reduce evil by paying more attention to it over the last 2, 3, 4,000 years? Is it working? Are spiritual masters accurate when they say, instead, raise your consciousness above the evil, and you will then be the individual who's actually helping disperse and eliminate it? Because trying to reduce evil by paying attention to it is like going up to a movie screen with a very large eraser and trying to erase the movie on the screen. And instead, we have to go back to the projector and change the projector. Anyway, 2 more days of talking about this. Let's see what we think. Try resisting not evil today and see if it uplifts your day. I'll try to do the same thing. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.